Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So Chris Eubank Jr. defeats Liam Williams by a unanimous decision, in which was a pretty good fight, to be honest. I wouldn't call it a barn burner, but it was definitely a good fight. It was watchable, and at points it was competitive, but Eubank Jr. was always a few steps ahead of Liam Williams. Now this fight started out Liam Williams trying to press Eubank Jr. He was trying to press Eubank Jr. behind his jab, and I felt Liam Williams actually started the first round pretty well. He was connecting with a jab on Eubank Jr. Eubank Jr. was backpedaling, flicking his jab from the waist, and he was catching Liam. But I felt early on in the first round, Liam was, he was the aggressor and he was doing quite well. But towards the end of the first round, Liam Williams got overcautious. He overextended and he fell in over his front foot, and Eubank Jr. timed him with a really nice quick jab, which dropped Liam Williams. First round was 10-8, and round two wasn't any better for Liam Williams. I think after that first knockdown, Liam Williams tried to show some urgency, and he was taking a lot of risks in the second round. Eubank Jr. once again was timing him with the jab, taking the half step back and looking really good, timing Liam Williams coming in. He was also mixing in that check left hook, which I'm assuming he learned from Roy Jones Jr. And Chris was countering very well in the second round. And in the second round, he actually dropped Liam Williams again. This time, he caught Liam with, I think it was a jab, then a real hard straight right hand, followed by a left hook. And the left hook is what sent Liam Williams down, but it was the right hand which hurt Liam Williams. So 2 rounds gone, and it's 2 10-8 rounds for Chris Eubank Jr. Round 3, Liam Williams once again was applying pressure, popping the jab, and I felt round 3 was better for Liam Williams. Eubank was still countering effectively, backpedaling, making Liam Williams overreach, etc. But Liam Williams definitely had a better round in the third, but I would still say Eubank Jr. was in control. He was the ring general, and in my opinion, he was landing the more eye-catching shots. Round 4. Once again, Liam Williams gets dropped, and once again, it's a really quick counter jab from Chris Eubank Jr. At this point in time, Liam Williams is looking kind of desperate to claw back the deficit from the previous rounds. And once again, man, no attention to defense. Liam was rushing in, coming in straight lines. He was very guilty in this fight of following Eubank around, more so than cutting the ring off. And in round 4, he once again walked into a quick Eubank jab, which dropped him. At this point in time, Liam Williams has a mountain to climb. And in the first 4 rounds, I felt Chris Eubank Jr. was looking excellent. He was looking extremely fast, both in regards to hand speed, counter-punching and foot speed, and he was making Liam Williams look like a bit of a mug, quite frankly. But to be fair to Liam Williams, after round 4, I felt he made a spirited effort of it. Once again, at this point, he had no other option but to apply pressure, which he was doing, but he was changing levels with his head movement a little bit better. He was sticking behind his jab, and on top of that, he was making it really rough. Quite frankly, he was being quite dirty, forearming, headlocking, etc., elbows, heads, that sort of thing. He was making it a bit of a street fight after round 4. And honestly, from round 5 till about round 10, Liam Williams was making all of those rounds very, very competitive, and he won several of those rounds. I felt he was the more active fighter. He was actually landing a few good overhand rights on Chris Eubank Jr., which were landing, but one thing Chris Eubank Jr. was doing very well in this fight, even when he got caught flush, in particular by the overhand right, he was doing a very good job of rolling the shot. So despite it being a scoring punch, he took the sting out of those punches. But yeah, rounds 5 to rounds 9 or 10, I felt that Liam Williams was definitely upping the ante. He was, I would say, he was displaying a better punch output. Eubank Jr. was still pot-shotting behind the jab, timing Liam coming in with his overhand right, and also check left hook, on occasion the right uppercut. And that's one thing I wanted to see more of from Chris Eubank in this fight, was his uppercuts. As we know, he throws very good uppercuts, but in my opinion, he wasn't throwing enough of them in this fight. Liam Williams was very front foot heavy, coming in straight lines. At times his head was over his front foot. I felt the uppercut was there for Chris Eubank Jr., particularly in the first 4 or 5 rounds in this fight. So yeah, Liam kind of, I wouldn't say he made the fight close per se, but he was making it more competitive from rounds 5 to 10. But the last couple of rounds, round 11, I felt Chris Eubank Jr. had a pretty good round. He regained control, snapping the head back of Liam Williams with the jab, walking him in to his quick right-hand counter. And yeah, solid round for Chris Eubank Jr. Round 11, Chris Eubank Jr. scores yet another knockdown on Liam Williams, but to be fair, this time around it wasn't a knockdown. Chris Eubank Jr. landed 2 punches to the body, a left and a right, and then he followed up with a right hand that basically completely missed Liam Williams, and he pulled Liam Williams over, and it was ruled a knockdown. The 4th knockdown was definitely a bad call by the referee, but he scored it as a knockdown. It is what it is. And round 12, you know, Eubank Jr. was backpedaling. He had the fight won at this stage. And yeah, he was posturing, showboating, etc., which he was doing throughout all of his fight, by the way. And yeah, round 12 was what it was, you know. So yeah, Chris Eubank Jr. Wins the fight by a UD. A clear winner, but this fight to me was the epitome of Chris Eubank Jr. as a fighter, and, you know, for his career as a whole. You know, flashes of world class, periods of inactivity, and moments of real unrefined technique. This was the epitome of Chris Eubank Jr. in my opinion. This performance to me was a mixed bag. At times he looked exceptionally quick, really sharp, some nice counterpunching, a lovely jab at stages, but on the flip side, he let Liam Williams hang around, he let him survive. I felt that the knockout was there if Chris Eubank Jr. stepped through the gears and really put it on Liam. There were periods of inactivity where he let Liam Williams win rounds, and at times he was swinging wildly off balance, looking for certain shots. So it was a mixed bag for Chris Eubank Jr., but he did win the fight, and it's on to the next one for Chris. Where does he go from here? I mean, quite frankly, it's now or never for Chris Eubank Jr. He's 32 years old, had over 30 fights at this point in time. I want to see Chris Eubank Jr. fight an elite middleweight. So that means one of the champions, Gennady Golovkin, Ryota Murata, Demetrius Andrade, Jamal Charlo, or a fellow top contender such as, I don't know, Jaime Munguia, for example. These are the sort of fights I want from Chris Eubank Jr. next. It's now or never. I think there were signs of improvements in this fight under Roy Jones, but he's still not the finished article. He still has a lot of glaring flaws. And would I pick him to beat any of the champions? Not Jamal Charlo, not Demetrius Andrade, not Gennady Golovkin, but I think he would beat Ryota Murata. So there we go. But who knows? I mean, Chris Eubank Jr. He's a fun fighter in my opinion. I find his antics in the ring quite entertaining. I know a lot of people don't really like his showboating and things of that nature. I quite enjoy it. I can't lie. I quite enjoy it. So I got what I wanted from this fight. It was pretty good, and Eubank was the winner and the rightful winner. So there we go. Share your thoughts below. It's been your guy Delboy. Peace.